episode of the Coffee, Commerce, and Catechesis podcast. Join us on our journey to learn more about the Christian faith and how we can live it out in our modern world. If you're a Christian and you wrestle with your identity because all you hear is people saying Christians are terrible, you're not alone. We have Mario Toneguzzi with us to talk about the hostility to Christians in the media. Over to you, Travis.
Thanks, Rigel, and thank you everyone for tuning in for another episode of Coffee, Commerce, and Catechesis. As Rigel mentioned, we are talking today about the media, Christianity, and maybe specifically why the media seems to be so hostile to Christians. I'm going to pull, as always, a quote from someone to frame the conversation. Today, I'm drawing upon a passage that was written by William E. Simon of the Catholic Education Resource Center. He wrote, "The national news media delight in portraying the Catholic Church as an intolerant and anachronistic institution, out of touch with the times. On such issues as celibacy in the priesthood, or women in the priesthood, or premarital sex, or homosexuality, the teachings of the Church will rarely get a fair shake. Many journalists seem to think that the teachings of the Church are arrived at through bargaining and negotiation among self-appointed interest groups. They are not. And it is inexcusable that so many journalists fail to grasp such a fundamental point." So that's going to frame the conversation around hostility to Christians, seemingly, in the media. And to have this conversation, we're joined by an expert on all things media. By way of introduction, Mario Toneguzzi has more than 40 years of experience as a daily newspaper writer, columnist, and editor. He worked for 35 years at the Calgary Herald, covering sports, crime, politics, health, faith, business, city, and breaking news. He is the co-editor-in-chief at Retail Insider, managing editor at Canada's Podcast, a national freelancer, owner of Mario Toneguzzi Communications Incorporated, and in 2021, he was named a top 10 business journalist in the world. He has been a lifelong Catholic Christian, is a member of the Knights of Columbus, and practices his faith in both the Roman Catholic and the Ukrainian Catholic churches. So Mario, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Pleasure.
Well, I've just given your bio. You know a thing or two, it sounds like, about the newspaper business and the media business generally, including about podcasts, which you're joining us here today. So we really appreciate you being here. Maybe if you can you tell us a little bit about your journey? I mean, I know you can't cram 40 years of media career into a podcast snippet, but what can you tell us beyond what I just shared about your life professionally in the media over the last 40 years?
Well, this is an interesting topic because, I am a practicing Catholic and very strong in my faith. I admit I haven't been always in my youth as a typical 20 plus year old, you just journey and you go away and eventually the prodigal son returns type thing, right? So
We know exactly what you mean.
it was during that period of time that I kind of went away from the church. It was when my career as a journalist was forming, right, and developing. But over the years, I came back to my faith. I came back to my faith strong. But I could see, I could just see in being in it the bias in things. One and not. Yeah, generally in terms of Christianity, but also in a wider scope on faith itself, and then on a more narrow thing on Catholicism, right? And being Catholic is kind of like you got a bullseye on you these days from the media, right? Because
It's the perfect storm.
Yeah.
it's almost nothing. Almost nothing gets out there that's not controversial when it comes to the media covering the Catholic faith. And I can't remember who the author was, but I remember one author one year saying that basically the hatred, I guess, and the bias towards Catholicism was the only legitimate one that was still around, and tend to agree with them.
I think there's I don't know, similar to you, I can't remember who said it, but the phrase anti-Catholicism is the last form of acceptable bigotry.
And that's
And,
probably the one I'm thinking.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
as a recent convert, and I've talked about this in other episodes we have, as a recent convert to the Catholic Church, I didn't know it until I lived it. I would have thought, 5 years ago, if you had said, do people, disdain or whatever the word is, choose a word, do they have overtly negative feelings towards Catholics? I would have been like, probably not. Like, it's probably about the same as anybody. And then I converted and I realized that, no, very much so. And then paying attention certainly to the media. My father, who Mario, my father has been in the media business for much of his adult life. I love reading. I love reading a variety of sources, and I've just become very aware of how anti-Catholic seems the best word. Mainstream media seems to be, and it's not just Catholics. I think people of faith in general are kind of looked at skeptically, but specifically Catholics. So with that being said, when it sounds like you were forming your career at the beginning before you were back in, as a practicing your faith and stuff. What did that look like when you started your media career? How did you start to become aware of what seemed to be a bias against people of religious faith?
Well, living that period of time away from faith, I really didn't see it, right? And well, not only didn't see it, I didn't care, or I didn't pay attention to it, right? But coming back, when I was back into the faith, then you could start seeing things, right? You could start seeing how, let's be blunt here, the focus of the media when it comes to Catholicism in the past, whatever, 10 years or so, has been on a couple of things, right? Is the priests, the issue and
Hmm.
sexual abuse, and then the
Yep.
residential schools, and that's what the focus
Yep.
is.
Yep.
And there's and it's a focus, quite frankly, of a lot of people, right? That are not in the media, but can you, I always go like this through my head. Can you imagine the media with its laser pointed, criticism on Catholicism, on these topics, going on and on and on and on? Not to say condoning what happened, but just that
Of course.
laser focus on that. If it was translated to some other faith, it would
Totally.
never happen. And you know what? There's other faiths that have a lot of other issues too. I'm not going to get into it because I'm going to get in trouble if I get into it. But they don't. And I think one of the reasons, and this comes right back to Catholics themselves, and the church themselves. I think one of the reasons they don't, because they haven't fought back. Catholics haven't fought back,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
while the other religions, God Almighty, don't even go there, right? In the media,
Yeah.
because the backlash and the response you're going to get from these religions. But Catholics it's kind of like the old, I'll use the boxing thing. It's like remember my favorite boxer of all time, Muhammad Ali, right? And he's up in I think it was the one, the Thriller in Manila, or no, that
Okay.
wasn't the one. It was the Rumble in the Jungle. It was against George Foreman, and he did the rope-a-dope. It was like the
Mm.
rope-a-dope all the time, right? And that's what it seems like Catholic and the church are doing. They're just doing the rope-a-dope, taking all the punches, right? Although in the end, Muhammad Ali won because he wore him out. But hopefully the Catholics will win out too, that way.
There's something to be said there. I was having a discussion with my mom when the whole Olympics thing happened, the mockery of the
Well,
Last Supper. Obviously, there was outrage from Christians all over the world about that. But it seems to me that, or at least I'll mention what my mom said first. She said, part of the reason why they feel so comfortable insulting us is because, we have this virtue of forgiveness and mercy and, and tolerance. And so when people make fun of us, it's about turning the other cheek and whatnot. And so we don't retaliate. And so they feel very comfortable coming after us. But I also feel like, even with the retaliation this time around, like the insult was obvious and Christians did speak out. And all the authorities did were kind of being like, oh well, sorry you were insulted, that's not our fault, kind of thing. And it seems they're a little too comfortable with doubling down on insults to us, as opposed to when it's another faith. I think the fact that it's not just people of that faith, but also people of other faiths that come to their aid and support them, and like, oh, you can't be saying things about this religion. I don't think that really happens as much for Christians. I know some of our Jewish friends did stand up for us. Even some of our Muslim friends did stand up for us, in the face of such injustice. But yeah, it didn't really seem to affect anyone enough for them to say sorry or to change their attitude toward things.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to think even through that Paris fiasco and the Olympics, there was really nothing even coming out of the Vatican or the Pope about that,
Yeah,
right? Which,
took a
Yeah,
while. Yeah.
took a while. Yeah.
bless his soul, but you're the leader of this massive church and following. You know what? You got to show leadership. And I know that on the local level, can you imagine? I'll throw back one of our old bishops, Bishop Fred Henry. Can you imagine if this happened under his reign? Like, he would have been out full force talking about it, right? And that's what we need to do. And that's what whether it's at the church level or not. You know, the thing is, I think I think we've been scared so much to talk about things as Catholics
Yeah.
because we're
Hmm.
afraid of the backlash we're going to get, afraid of how we're going to be depicted, etc. Uh, you know, uh, the only way things are going to change is if Catholics start talking again about their faith and being open about it, and not hiding it. Um, I think one of the threatening things is that for say the media or for others is that this is an institution that's been around 2000 plus years, and yeah, there's been changes, etc., but the core of that institution exists and remains
Mhm.
and never changes, right? And that's
Yeah.
maybe what's threatening to them, right? Is that whereas today we live in a society where, heck, there is no truth. Like, we can do whatever we want. Tomorrow I'm gonna identify myself as a dog, and I'll be fine, right? And
That
Yeah.
used to be a joke, but it's
I
not
know,
even a joke anymore.
Joke
Like,
anymore.
that's a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. And I think that's what's threatening to people is that there is an institution out there that is rock solid, and as Christ said to Peter, you're the rock, and you build the foundation of, build the faith on that, and it hasn't wavered despite the storms and on the sea that the ship, the Catholic Church, has sailed.
Something that I've reflected on, um, in light of the fiasco at the opening ceremonies in Paris, and the seeming, I was really encouraged by responses by, say, Bishop Robert Barron in the United States. He
Yeah,
came out forcefully
Definitely.
and said, and that's encouraging, because I wish every bishop would do it. I'm glad that some did it. So there were some things I was encouraged by. There were other things, like you said, Mario, like the Vatican itself seemingly didn't say anything for like 9 days, and then when it did, it was kind of a soft, just following on what other bishops around the world had come out and said. And so I would have liked personally to see a stronger response.
yeah,
I don't know what the right answer is, but I don't think that was the right one. Um,
yeah,
but something that I think is interesting is that in our culture today, and this is going to lead to my next question for you, Mario. In our culture today, what you've highlighted something where it's like, I can choose to be a dog tomorrow, basically. And what that taps into is we have just descended into this idea where radical autonomy is like the most important thing. And so no one can tell me anything about what I am, what I ought to do. I define that. I define what is good. What's good for you is not good for me necessarily. And there's no objective standard. And I think one reason that people just don't like Catholics so much is because to be a good Catholic, you have to admit that there are some things that you just need to accept. there is a structure in the church, and you don't just get to decide the rules of your religion. You have to adhere to certain things, which is very much against the radical autonomy, individualism, and everything that prevails in our culture. So with that as sort of a,
But
a
here's the thing.
background,
Here's the question.
yeah, tell me.
Okay, so here's the question, right? There's rules in society, right? There's rules and that you follow, and they're called laws, right? And they're there for a reason, right? And just like the Catholic Church has you wouldn't call them laws, but but I guess rituals and
Yep.
beliefs, et cetera, et cetera. The Catholic Church has that too, and there are reasons and solid reasons they're there. Okay, so
Hmm.
if I'm I'm pulled over by the police officer for speeding, and say, well, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in you're speeding. Sorry, but you're going to get the ticket,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But as I said, it's but but here's the thing, though, right? Why are people? You have a choice. You can be Catholic or not, right? And so why are people who are not Catholics so uh, angry at the
Yeah.
church for believing certain things that they don't believe in? I don't
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
How does it threaten their lives in any way? I don't know. So what is it? But and going back to what you were saying about, about Father Barron and talking about things. Um, Again, I come back to the thing is that where the priests been? Right? On things like this. They have to show leadership too and come out and okay, I got to talk. I got to choose my words carefully when I'm going to say next because I'm going to get myself in trouble. But I knew a priest that a few years ago delivered a Sunday homily, and it was in the whole area of gay pride and the symbol of gay pride and stuff. And I'll leave it at there. But what ended up happening, he basically got slapped on the wrist for by the church locally, and the media just got wind of it and blasted him to smithereens. Yet, what he was saying has had a lot of validity to it, but
Hmm.
people just would not sit there and listen to it and in an objective way. And but so I think a lot of the priests have become, hmm, let's I guess I don't know, not afraid, but they've kind of been tempered and leery about going
Yeah.
in certain things. That's why a lot of churches, a lot of people, a lot of priests don't talk about sin. They don't talk about the devil. They don't talk about hell
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Anymore, it's kind of a lukewarm, feel good, fuzzy faith, and so that's once I'm a big believer in the slippery slope theory, right? That you're sitting here like at this spot and you're wondering how the heck did we get here, whatever in society. Well, you know what, go back this way and start looking at the little steps along the way,
Hmm.
and that's how you got there, right? And the I don't blame the 60s, but you could see from in 60s on, with everything, all the protests, everything that was going on in society, the everything being unleashed, so to speak. And that's when it started. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but the whole idea about this autonomy issue, I I can believe what I want. Nobody's going to tell me what to do, type thing. Really started then, right? And it just become, as you progress through time, just become to the point where you are now, right?
Marius, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier on. You talked about how when you were young, because you weren't really practicing your faith or because you had strayed a little bit, you weren't really noticing the hostility to Catholics, and that resonates a lot for me because, again, the story of the prodigal son, one of my favorites in the Bible, because it gave me some hope because I was such a degenerate before, and I had to come back to the faith, and I needed hope for that. I needed to believe that the Father was willing to forgive, which of course He is. But I experienced something very similar to you. I'm a cradle Catholic, and I grew up in a very secular culture, except for my family. I wasn't really surrounded by Catholics as such, and it never really hit me how hostile the culture was towards Catholics. And even as I grew up and even as my faith developed, it wasn't really hitting me until we started things like this podcast and we started posting on LinkedIn and we started becoming more vocal about our faith. That's when we realized how hostile people are to us. The comments that we'll get on social media, the retaliation that we'll see, that doesn't really, it doesn't become apparent until you become vocal about your own faith, because in some ways ignorance is bliss. So I'm curious, as you were coming into the media profession, how did things start to become more apparent to you, and how was it affecting you as someone working in the media?
Well, once as I said, got came back to my faith, I could start seeing, because my eyes were open to it, right? And but I was kind of uh, got to the point where I'm not really talking about my faith in the office because I know where 90% of the people stood, right, and on that, and for some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason, the journalism profession was um, not a magnet for a lot of practicing people with faith, right? A
Mm,
strong faith. I don't know why, but it's just like the way it is, right? But as I said, you just notice it in different comments, and once you start thinking about it, and you look and go, man, the media is saying this about Catholics. Like, would they say this about the Jewish people or about Muslims
Yeah,
or Sikhs or
totally.
whatever? And you start thinking, no, they wouldn't. And then you
Yeah,
start thinking, okay, well, why? Like, why wouldn't they do that? And why is it that they're constantly, going back, like going against the Catholics on things? And again, let's, going back again to this, the whole two issues of sexual abuse in residential schools. Yeah, those are tragic events in history. Don't sugarcoat it. It happened. It unfortunately happened, and it shouldn't have happened. That all that type of stuff. But do you there's things in other religions that you can talk about. There's things in institutions and in government uh, that have been bad, right? And uh, do you label everything on those couple of things? You know what I mean? Like, do you throw all your idea of what a Catholic is, or what Canada or USA is because of a couple of things, right? You know. Yeah, and that's the thing. I have arguments a lot with different friends who don't have faith, and I pose that question a lot of times. That some countries have committed horrendous crimes against humanity, but do you label the whole country that way? You know, and not look at maybe there's done a lot of good, and that's the things that I shouldn't say argue, but I would point out to different friends of mine who may not believe what I believe, about the good that Catholic faith has done over time. The fact that the things like some of the institutions like education and hospitals and all that,
hospitals.
and
Yeah.
all the charity
Hmm.
work and all that stuff, the Mother Teresa's of the world, and everything. Do you just throw all that aside because of a couple of really bad things that happened?
Totally. Actually, that leads me to an interesting comment. So I'm wearing a jacket. I'm wearing a jacket here for Colombia. My wife is Colombian, and a story that is very relevant on what you're pointing out, which is the all the amazing and good things that individual Catholics or the church as an institution have done over time. They seemingly just get dismissed instantly to focus on the far fewer but easier to talk about negative things. And a great example, so one of my favorite cities in the world is Cartagena. It's on the Caribbean coast in Colombia. And if you go to Cartagena, the main cathedral there, and there's statues all over the city of a saint who is Peter Claver. Peter Claver was a Spanish Jesuit, and he went to the New World, New Granada, which subsequently became Colombia. And he went there, and he was a fierce defender of the African slaves who had been brought there. And he was the one, because of his Catholic faith, fighting against the conquistadors who were calling themselves Catholics and were baptized Catholics, but were absolutely not living the Catholic faith. You had this Catholic priest who was standing up for the rights of these people and defending them. And for that, he's become this great figure throughout history. I think he's the patron saint, I believe. Let me just check here. He's the patron saint of enslaved people.
Oh,
And
cool.
that so I often think about that story because if you listen to the common narrative, and I know this all the time because I'm married to a Colombian, so I will hear people talk about this as if they understand Latin America, which is infuriating for me because I actually do. I spend a lot of time there. People will talk about, oh, the slave trade and the Catholics went there and they did all these awful things. And it's like, well, what about the story of Peter Claver? He actually was trying to fight against the people that were trying to pervert the Catholic faith. And he stood for what Catholicism actually is. But that just
Yeah.
gets totally missed and totally tossed out. So in your work, Mario, knowing that the truth is regularly complicated. And of course, there sometimes some things are black and white, but many things are shades of gray. And it seems to me that responsible journalism would focus on, okay, let's be real about the shades of gray because a story can't be purely bad or purely good. But that doesn't seem to be the way it is often. And it certainly doesn't seem to be the way it is when Catholicism is considered. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, you kind of hit on a pet peeve of mine, and and it's all about the bias, right? And how you look at things. And I'm going to mention a couple of things. I remember my days at the Herald back in oh geez, it would have been about early '90s when we got a new publisher in. And the new publisher, and I mean, people won't remember him, Ken King, and he ended up, becoming what was it, president of the Calgary Flames, etc. He was a Catholic, and he passed away a couple of years ago now. But I remember Ken coming into their newsroom and saying, him and one of the editors, they came up with this acronym. It was FAB, FAB, fair, accurate, balanced. And those were the kind of the pillars and the guiding lights of what a story should be, right? And if it didn't have all those three elements to it, it wasn't going in the paper. And the balance part to me was the interesting one, because that's where a story makes an accusation, or sets out an idea, and maybe the comment on the other side is kind of buried down below at the end. No, this had to be up, and so that would makes it balanced. So that was and that's what I find with especially in the media, with a lot of the coverage that we're seeing today. That balance part isn't there. Which reminds me that you guys are too young for this, but there used to be this old guy. I don't know where he was based, but his name was Paul Harvey, and he used to do these little mini radio things, around the noon hour, and he would tell a story, and then he'd break for a commercial, and he'd come back with the rest of the story. Which
Hmm.
and that was to me was always the thing. There's always this second side of things. There's always a countering opinion, or even sometimes countering facts or whatever, right? And the problem is the media doesn't do that today. No matter what it is, they've got a tunnel vision on something, Catholicism, boom, okay, and that's where they go. They got a tunnel vision on, dare I even go here, certain things about conspiracy stuff, like whether it's
Hmm.
COVID or other things. They
Yeah.
got tunnel vision, and
Yeah.
you know what? The other side of the story, the rest of the story isn't revealed or divulged because they think, these people are idiots, they're wackos, or crazy people, etc. So they should not give them any airtime or any time in print type thing. Again, that's my pet peeve of everything, is that if you make a statement or an allegation about something, I don't care, this is beyond Catholicism. Well, you better go and get the other side of the story and have it there in play. But unfortunately, for years and years and years, we've gone down that slippery slope where no, not getting the other side of the story, because we're going to tell you what the story is.
Hmm.
It's interesting, Mario, that when you mentioned the acronym FAB, fair, accurate, and balanced, I was about to say three words I would never associate with the media. What is
Today,
three words I would never associate with the media, Alex? That's what I would have said.
yeah,
And it's a shame. To go back to something that Travis said as well, there tends to be an over focus on negative things, and it seems to be because
mm,
that's the sort of stuff that draws eyeballs.
yeah,
If we know the media at all, that's what it's about. Like, if you tell me what your incentives are, I'll show you what your actions will be. So, if the media is vying for attention, they're looking for eyeballs, they're gonna, have the sensationalist
oh yeah.
headlines, and they're just gonna align themselves with a popular narrative, right? So I'm curious, when you were working in secular media, did you ever experience, censorship in the way that we see it today? Whether it's on social media and stuff, or even the stuff that you were being asked to write or publish about. Was there anything that maybe was directly contrary to your faith?
No, not really. There was nothing. When I think back, there was nothing I could say that approached that in any way. The only thing is, I remember being asked once to do something, but I thought it was unethical, and I said no, I'm not going to do it, and that was it. And
Wow.
yeah, but yeah, so I've never encountered that personally. So, yeah. What's really
Oh, that's
interesting
fair.
too is the amount of besides the focus and what they're writing about, the media, the other part of it is the lack of coverage of religion and faith, right? and
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and and back in the days, there was, we say, in the Herald, when and Travis, when I first got to your dad, we used to have like a full page on Saturdays of faith, and it changed names. I think it was religion once, and then faith and spirituality. But there was always coverage and stuff in there, like stories, and I think we even had a calendar of events that was happening, and that slowly went by the wayside. And I always thought, and I remember reading about this too, thinking that, you know, the media is all about, obviously, as you mentioned, Rigel, the eyeballs and stuff, and the media covers a lot of different things. But my gosh, how many people are there of faith out there, right? And you want eyeballs, like, look how many eyeballs you've got, with all the religions in there. Yet the media gives religion a very limited coverage, and it's kind of glossed over, and it's only when, as Travis, you mentioned, only when some of this quote unquote negative stuff comes out, and that they write about.
Mario, you've because of your tenure in the industry, you will have been around before social media changed the media industry in general, and then you've seen what social media has done. And Rigel and I with this podcast, we've been amazed at the level of negative feedback we get on some of the things that we just say like commonsensical things. They're not even particularly religious, and then like the hatred is
Oh,
like I can't even
geez.
read comments because it's just like it's too
Well,
much. Um,
I was just gonna say, but like I'm a social media nut, right? And I'm always on social media and all the platforms, and I'm constantly on it because I believe it. I believe in it, and I believe in the fact that it's a way to reach people with stories, reach people with messages, whatever, which is an aside, which is one thing I think the Catholic Church hasn't jumped on and utilized well enough. But when you look at the whole social media thing, there's more level of like hatred out there and bitterness. There's uh, the ability to be quote unquote anonymous, so it makes people feel like courageous, I guess, hiding behind some stupid name. That they can say things like that. But what's the point? You know what? That I think that's one of the things that we've gotten into. And again, this could be even taken back to looking at Catholicism and faith stuff. We've become polarized in society. People are on this side and believe in things. People on this side, they believe on things, and the conversations are not good conversations. They're not the kind of level-headed, respectful conversations. They're more like the name calling and that type of thing, and the accusations and criticism, as opposed to just stay on topic and just talking about it in a civil manner.
so would you say you use social media heavily? Would you, in your view as an expert in the media industry, do you think social media has been a net positive for our culture, or are you not so certain?
I'm not certain. I'm not certain. There are the negatives and a lot of them. There are also a lot of positives, right? And I just think you know you have to utilize it to the best of your abilities in what you want to achieve. And again, I go back to, the say, let's go back to Catholicism. What you were talking about here today is we haven't, as Catholics, used it to our advantage and to our benefit enough. And just as a matter of thing, I don't know when I don't know when you're going to air this, but I'm working on some stuff right now. I'm working on some stuff that involves social media and it involves Catholicism. But I haven't figured it out yet, but just percolating in my head because I think the Catholic story needs to be told in another way that's not being told today. Put it that way.
Well, whatever it is that you're is percolating and stuff, keep us posted on it. And if you're
Yeah.
able to share, and before the episode comes out, I think we've got this scheduled for a couple months down the road. We can add it to the show notes and stuff. But I think you're right. I think there are some people in the church that I think are doing a great job. I'll use Bishop Barron again. I think he's using the media in general, social media included, in a great way to evangelize and share the faith and defend the faith. But he's also an exception. I think the
Oh
fact
yeah.
that he's so it comes to mind so easily is because no other bishops are doing what he's doing, and if they are, it's nowhere near as effectively. And so I think we need people like that. For you, Mario, how have you found, or have you found, your ability to use social media to try to share and or defend the faith? Have you used it in that way, and if so, how have you done so?
Oh, that's a good question. I tend to shy away from things that are going to cause a lot of problems. And it's usually the like the backlash on things and responses and feedback from people. What I try to do is put things out that are positive, and um, I try to share stories about what's happening in the Catholic faith, and that's the way I use it. And as I said, I don't think, well, I don't think, I know that it's, even on the local level, it's not used as well as it should be. And there's so many good Catholic stories out there, just locally, that aren't being told. And I think there's an opportunity there to fill a void, to tell those Catholic stories, and it's just creating the avenue to do that.
I'll make one. I'm going to validate what you just said with a simple example. Then I'll turn it over to Rigel for a question. But exactly to your point. So a couple weeks ago, here every year at one of the parishes that my wife and I attend, we have an annual, basically festival of the nations, where it's a multicultural, to put it lightly, like a truly multicultural church community. And so we have one Sunday a year, we have a huge party, and it's incredibly well attended. Like, there's no parking in the entire community. It's crazy. All the food sells out. It's an amazing day. Now, if that is covered at all, I'm unaware of it, and like, I work in the media business currently, so should probably be aware of it, or someone would bring it to my attention. And there's no coverage of it. But if you had an event, and I can guarantee this, if you had an event that was even half the size, but it was for some cause that is, I'll use the word woke because I don't know what else to do to be politically correct. There would be a story on it, and it would be a feel good piece that was covering this community event and stuff. And then meanwhile, you have a Catholic church doing something, and no one cares. Now, I wish that wasn't the case. It seems to be the case. I don't know what I can do about it. I'm just complaining about it right now, but it seems to tap into what you're pointing out, which is there's probably not much that you can do about the general narrative, but what you're trying to do, it sounds like, is share positive things to at least get it out there. Would that be your encouragement to guys like us to be trying to share these positive?
Yeah, 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 and as you were mentioning that, I was thinking of one thing. You know, today, we're at a stage, obviously, in society or whatever, the the development of technology has grown immensely, continues to grow, etc. It makes being a, a media a media outlet in whatever fashion that manifests itself a lot easier, right? Things like this, what you guys do, like become, there's a lot of opportunities to create a media platform, and I think that's evident in taking a look at the secular side of things. You look, at the Herald and the Calgary Sun, their circulation numbers have dwindled to like so low it's unbelievable compared to what they used to be, right? Created a void. So now you've got all these kind of niche publications that have come in, that they're not doing the coverage of everything. So one's doing entertainment and culture, one's doing politics and local government, one's doing business, all that type of stuff. There's the opportunity. There's the opportunity there for faith and religion and spirituality, of something coming in and filling that void. And because again, let's go back to the numbers. You look at how many people go to a church on a Sunday, or go and practice their faith in whatever, mosque, temple, or synagogue or whatever, right? So there's the audience there. It's the ability now to just take it, and create something for it.
Mario, I have kind of two questions. The first is that you mentioned you like to put out positive things into the world. Now, this may sound naive, but that's what we think we're doing. And we say things that should be perceived as good, like, oh, the family unit is an important thing, and
Oh
it's a
yes,
good
oh
thing
yeah,
for society, and people will blow up.
oh yeah.
So it's like I really don't know. Like, so can you clarify as the first part to the question? What do you mean by putting positive things out there?
Oh,
And
that's
as a second part,
yeah.
if you were in charge of media for like the Diocese of Calgary, how would you I guess create a system around the social media page for the diocese? What kind of stuff would you post?
You got an interesting point about the positive thing, because that's true, right? And, because everybody's going to find something negative in something. It don't matter
Hmm.
if it's a positive story; they'll find something negative if they have that mindset that, oh my gosh, look at the Catholics and what they're doing now, type thing, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one to answer. Like I think it's just staying away from the hot button, items that are you just know by gut feeling that heck, this is going to create a problem if I'm going to post something on that. So that's that part. The thing with the diocese, and just as an aside, I used to actually, one year, I can't remember what year it was, I did the newsletter for the diocese, like way
Gotcha.
back, for a
Hmm.
year. I did that, and just started it up. Um, uh, and but my philosophy was always that you tell the stories of what people are doing with their faith. You tell the stories of how people came to their faith. Those are the stories you tell. That not the story about Saint whatever, Saint Travis's church doing a bingo, and 50
Mm,
people attended. That type of thing. No, you
Hmm.
you tell the stories that are impacting the city, and how they're impacting the city. There's tons and tons of great charitable organizations that are doing phenomenal work based on their faith. And these are the stories you got to tell out there, and you do it. I'm a firm believer that when it comes to social media, you just do a blitzkrieg, right? It's not
Mm.
like, okay, you know what, I'm going to write a story and I'm posting it here. Oh, maybe, in a couple of weeks I'll do something else and post it. No, no, it's just like blast, 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 blast with stuff, right? And you get it out.
Mario, I want to ask because we're chatting about the diocese, and I think it's been long enough now that I can share this. So, a while ago, I had an opportunity. It was down to me and one or two other folks for a very senior role with the Diocese of Calgary, a business oriented role, and it didn't work out. And I think that was the absolute right thing. But when I was going through the process of interviewing and discerning, I was praying on this. I was talking to a lot of people I trust. I found myself really torn because I wasn't sure if I can be of more service to the church inside the church or outside the church. And by that, I mean, like, I'm a practicing Catholic. So, of course, I'm inside the church. But in terms of working within the structure of the church, I wasn't sure if I could actually serve the church as well, being an employee of a diocese, as I want to be able to by doing things like this podcast and some of the other initiatives. So for yourself, you know the media business so much better than we do. Do you think that someone like yourself, if let's say you had an opportunity to join a diocese and work for them and oversee like social media strategy and stuff like that, do you think you could actually do more good in a role like that? Or do you think being a part of the secular media and taking your faith into what you do you think you're a bigger service to the church in that respect?
Well, you know what? Let's put it this way. Like, if you're working within the diocese and with the diocese, your channels, you're preaching to the converted, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and so, like, if you want to use the word, the evangelization part of it is not there, because nobody's gonna, that's not Catholic, and gonna go to the to the Diocese of Calgary's webpage to look at the news events or stories, or nobody's going to subscribe to the I can't remember what it's called, Faithfully, I think, their
Faithfully.
news,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, their newsletter. Nobody's going to do that, right? So I think, being on the outside and just uh, posting stuff on social media and all different channels in that way, becomes a lot easier. Like one of the things, in terms of reaching people. So yeah, I think it's important in that way, just because with a lot of people are searching for stuff, and you never know. You never know when you're gonna hit somebody, right? And and it stops them in their tracks, and they're reading stuff. Like, I'll I'll give you two quick stories about that, because sometimes you don't know how you reach people, but it's by being present in your faith and showing your faith. And the first story I got to tell you, years and years ago, one of friends of mine, were not Catholic, anti-Catholic in many ways, etc. In make the long story and the short version, came to my first child's baptism, converted. Something in there converted them, and they're strong to this day. 27 years later, this day they're very strong Catholics, and you would classify them as traditional Catholic. Second thing is just a personal thing with me. I'm away from the faith. One day I used to walk downtown and into the Belt Line, and on Sundays go find a bagel, along 17th Avenue, a bagel and cream cheese. I walking down 14th Street, saw Sacred Heart Church there, and I something compelled me to walk in the doors. And I walked in the doors, packed, absolutely packed. And I didn't know what the heck was going on. I had the last seat in the pews. Turned out it was Palm Sunday. Completely
Wow.
forgot.
That's awesome.
Didn't know it was and then that led me to come back to the church. Phone call on Monday morning, talking to Father Cooney at that time, who later became Bishop Cooney in Nelson, BC, and that's what brought me back to the faith. So you'd never know uh, how things and God and Jesus are going to be working inside you, but you got to be, yeah, you got to have. You got to be exposed to it, first of all, right? And you got to be exposed to something, right? And that can trigger things.
Mario, maybe this we're kind of coming to the end here, but maybe as a final question, you mentioned that when you were starting your career in the media business, there wasn't like a worry about your faith. I mean, you weren't super outspoken about it and stuff, but like a lot of young professionals, the worry that they have is that if they are outspoken about their faith, they will be canceled, meaning they could lose their jobs, they could lose their reputation, they might not find another job. What would you say to those people?
That is a tough one, right? And do you you know sitting around the water cooler, and comments are made about Catholics. Would you say anything or not? I don't know. It's a tough one to to answer definitively, because it depends, again, it depends on the environment that you're in, right? If you know that something that you would consider a defense of your faith will create a conflict and hostility, etc., well, why go there? Like, why would it be so important to go there? And what would that accomplish? You know what? But if there's injustice being done, then that's important to do, right? And to speak out.
And I think what you're highlighting there, Mario, is kind of like it's practicing prudence, which is one of the virtues. Obviously, it's knowing when, and like this is for me. I struggle with this all the time. Like I have to catch myself from fiercely defending the faith and like trying to blow up someone's worldview, which I'm inclined to do because I love research. I'm pretty steeped in history. I was in law school, so I know just enough to be dangerous. I'm good at arguing. But ultimately, what do I care most about? It's bringing people to Christ and sharing the joy that my wife and I have found in the church. And I don't do that if I just try to, fiercely fight back against someone speaking from a place of ignorance or making a mistake or whatever. So I think kind of what you're tapping into there is having the ability to be prudent and know when to speak up, how to speak up, and when not to. And and that's not an easy thing, of course, but I think that's what you're tapping into.
I think this is a phrase that's been attributed to Saint Francis, but about about preaching, it involves your actions, right? And it says something about preaching, if necessary, use words. So it's all about you know how you are and how in life and how you carry yourself about and how do you practice your faith in life. And that to me is the most important thing, as opposed to getting into a theological debate about different things, right?
Absolutely. Well, Mario, we appreciate you joining us for this conversation. I've enjoyed it. We'll have to have you back in the future for another one. Rigel, do you want to lead us in a quick prayer here to wrap us up?
For sure. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, we thank you for the gift of faith. We ask you for the grace to remain resolute in the face of adversity, trials, and suffering. In light of this conversation, we pray specifically for the grace to be charitable to those who do not understand us or do not strive to understand us. Help us to understand them and help us to pray for them always instead of resorting to an uncharitable attitude towards them. We ask all this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rigel, for the prayer. Thank you, Mario, for joining. Everyone
Thank
who
you.
has tuned in, be sure to check out Mario's work. We're going to put links to it in the show notes, so be able to be sure to check out the work that Mario does. He's been a great benefit to this city that we are in, Calgary, for decades now, and in ways we probably don't even understand, both for Catholics and non-Catholics. So thank you, Mario, for that. Please keep up the good work. We'll have to have you back. And until next time, thank you for listening. This has been the Coffee, Commerce, and Catechesis podcast.